Recording in progress.
All right, council, let's call to order this regular council meeting. Here we are Monday, September 18th at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex. This is also being streamed through Zoom and Facebook. Anyone that has a question related to anything on this evening's agenda, please email pnopper@townofstanders.ca. Mr. Nopper will make sure to put that in the comments as he always does. Let's jump right into the recording of attendance. I note that all members of council are in attendance with the exception of Councillor Gumashel. And I do want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto-Mugati people. Approval of the agenda. I will be looking for a slight amendment, but let's first get it on the table. Could I have a mover for the agenda? I've got Deputy Mayor Akji and seconded by Councillor Heenan. My amendment would be I did receive some emails in regards to some concern over the food truck for Oktoberfest, so I would need 2/3 of council to vote in favor of this to add this item back onto the agenda. So I'll be looking to amend the agenda to include under new business food truck for Oktoberfest discussion. All in favor of that amendment, please signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed to that amendment? That was unanimous, so that will be added back on, Mr. Nopper. And we'll go to that. Is there any other changes to the agenda? There is a motion that we will change under the date for the hearing of objections, but we can deal with that within the motion. Okay, not seeing any. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. And that agenda has been carried. Before we get into the disclosure of conflict of interest, just wanted to note every council member that this is Municipalities Week. So very, very big week for a lot of people, but September 18th to 22nd, I do want to recognize senior town staff as we have a couple of different activities going on. I guess Mr. Nopper, as a young kid, once got a ride home in a fire truck from school, so we're going to have a draw to see one of the kids at VMES can get have a chance for the fire truck to drive them home. And then what every kid dreams of is the day to be mayor for a day. That's what every child dreams of. So I understand they've written some letters, so we are going to go through those and have some fun with that. But thank you very much, staff. We didn't really celebrate that last year, so it's good you see more and more communities embracing it. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there any for this evening? Okay, seeing none. So we are going to jump right into presentations. The first one is a clean energy consultant. I understand Mr. Nopper, Mr. Spear met him at a conference. It's Joe Allison. He's going to be speaking to the Smart Energy Company opportunities. And I understand he's online. Welcome, Mr. Allison. Floor is yours.
Hey, great. Thanks. Thanks for having me here, Your Worship. Just wanted to appreciate or thank Paul for inviting us to present this evening. So my name's Joe Allison. I'm with the Smart Energy Company, and as was mentioned, I met with Paul at AMANB, and Paul invited me to come to the council and walk through who we are, what we've done with other municipalities, and where the opportunity for solar could be for the town of St. Andrews. So I've got a slide deck over here. All right, can you see that?
We can. We can.
Okay, super. Oh, there. All right, so we titled this "The Power of Municipal Solar." So it's really a slide deck that walks you through what solar can do for your municipality, and we'll jump right into it. So some background about our company. We're the Smart Energy Company. We've been around for about 8 years or so, and we're the only certified specialty solutions provider in New Brunswick for solar. So what that means is that allows us to be able to develop solar designs that unlock incentives that are provided through NB Power's efficiency program. So we would be the only provider in the province that does that today. Our legacy of developing solar systems is tied to our Nor'easter solar farm. So this is our proprietary solar system that we've built over the last 8 years we've been operating. We've had about 7 versions of it to date, we started with a system that was had a number of moving parts to it. It would follow the sun. We then modified it to have a system that it articulated, or it actually bent or tilted in alignment with the different seasons. And we now have a system that, as I mentioned, it's on our seventh iteration, and it's built for our environment, and it doesn't move at all. It's we've replaced any kind of moving parts with a system that is stable and has no movement to it, and that's really allowed us to have a system that is really engineered for our climate. Just some information about solar basics. So there's some different types of solar systems out there. Our nor'easter system is a ground-mounted solar system, and it's obviously positioned on the ground. It's much different than a roof system. One of the key differences is there's bifacial modules on the system. So it has solar panels that collect sunlight on the front as well as on the back, where you don't have that capability on a roof-mounted system. Obviously, it's on the roof, and you don't have the ability to collect sunlight on the back of the panel. So that's a key feature of our ground-mounted system. With a ground-mounted system, you can orient the system directly south. It lets you place the system on land that you may not be using, and putting a system on the ground lets you avoid retrofitting or penetrating a roof. So that's a key component. It's also much easier to stand up, and you can position it identically or exactly where you want it to be located. Take advantage of ground you're not using today. It's engineered for our climate, so it uses aluminum racking, and the racking structure is very robust. We've ensured that it's capable of dealing with the climate we have here in our environment. One of the things that solar works with today is net metering. So that's really the capability that allows you to produce energy and send power back to the grid. And you effectively are spinning the meter backwards when you do that. You're creating energy credits that you then would use outside of periods when the sun is shining. One of the great things about solar is the investment you make in solar effectively lets you buy energy for 30 years. So the system operates for a 30-year period, but it's 30 years plus. So the panel manufacturers that we work with guarantee that it'll run or it'll operate for 30 years to 85% of its production or 85% efficiency. But that's guaranteed for 30 years, but it will continue to produce after that. So that's why we say a minimum of 30 years. The system's modularized, so we have it built so that you can implement sections. So we have some customers who've done that quite recently. A company, Blue Roof Distillers, who's in just outside of the Moncton area. They planned on doing 10 different solar sections. They decided to do 5, and they're planning on doing 5 more. So the system's engineered in 10 kilowatt segments, which each of those segments is 18 solar panels in size, and you can add on to those as you increase or you want to expand the solar system, or based on your needs, you can tailor it to your energy requirements. The other thing that's great about the solar system is the technology we work with allows us to get access to the solar production that's happening in real time. So you can see historically what energy you're producing. You can also look back and see look and see what's happening in real time. So really some capability that is great, especially if you wanted to publicize that on a website, perhaps it lets you do that. And as I mentioned, it's in real time as well as historically. So why do we do solar? There's a couple of key reasons why someone would consider solar. One is about cost. The second, obviously, is about emission reduction, so carbon reduction, and excuse me, in particular. So a couple things I want to walk through what solar energy costs look like today and where they're going. So this looks at a residential pricing example. So today residential prices are about 12 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the line on the left, and the line on the bottom is years. So the graph is showing electricity and time along the bottom. So we're projecting energy today, or previously, at about 2.5% per year increase, which is this yellow line. More recently, our estimates and our expectation will be that it's going to increase in New Brunswick at about 5.7%. So that's quite an increase from what it's been to date, but we've seen some increases that would support that. There's also the potential that the rates could go even higher. So that's what the rate increase line would look like for a higher rate increase. Now, one of the things that solar does, I mentioned this earlier, is it lets you buy into purchasing electricity at effectively a lower rate. So this purple line shows what electricity would look like if you maintained it at 5 cents per kilowatt hour, which is, if you purchased a solar system, you're locking in that energy cost, and over time, you've got a flat price for that energy that you've purchased versus the increasing cost that you're seeing with the current price of electricity. So, I mean, really helps you look at, you're producing your own energy, flatlines your cost, and it allows you to look at what those operations budgets would need to look like from an electricity perspective. Secondly, it's also about CO2 reduction. So the system lets you enables you to take advantage of carbon dioxide reductions over the life cycle of the system. So depending on the size system, you can see metric tons. About the smallest 10 kilowatt system we produce, it's about 96 metric tons of CO2 offset over the life cycle of the system, and then it's about 1,000 metric tons over the life cycle of the larger 100 kilowatt system we manufacture. So one of the things I mentioned earlier, we're a certified specialty service provider, and through this we built what we call our solar feasibility study, and it really allows customers to identify what the potential for solar can look like in their operation. So the study gives you detailed solar design options, energy performance modeling. We provide an investment analysis with cash flow pro forma. There's environmental impact overview. We give you a detailed explanation of the available rebates and incentives. And then we provide it all in a comprehensive feasibility study report that we share with you. So this slide shows you what some of the outputs of an example customer might look like. So this customer that is in this example achieved about 97% of their electricity consumption through solar, and the lifetime savings of the solar system were in excess of $500,000. So a pretty great result would come from this solar system. So they're producing about 97% of their electricity needs, and that's about a yearly average savings of $11,000. And this shows in the middle the different environmental impacts. So it shows 720 metric tons of CO2 over the lifetime of the system, and then there's some environmental equivalents of the kilometers traveled and potential hectares of forest that will be preserved. And then it shows the system cost of $256,000 for this specific system, and incentives through efficiency programs of around 58,000. So it shows the net system cost as well. So what we've done for municipalities to date, we've followed kind of a typical approach. We've completed a solar feasibility study for the municipality. They fall, depending on the location and the bills or the utility rate that is being offset, you'd fall into one of two programs. You'd fall into either the industrial energy efficiency program or the commercial program. And then our study provides all the information required to take advantage of or get the incentives you're looking for a system, as well as provides information to help you with any capital budget discussions. And then after the study, we look at doing potentially a small pilot that falls within an operational budget. And then we build a phased approach to implement a system that matches with your budget availability. So very similar. This is a project that we would have done with Grand Bay, where we did a study, then did a small pilot system. The municipality or the town really got learnings out of the system, out of the pilot system, and understood what the potential for energy savings would be for solar. But they also looked at how a solar system was able to help them, or was going to be able to help them, achieve their greenhouse gas emission targets. And they decided, based on learnings from the study and what they learned from the pilot, that they could forego some of the other plans around carbon reduction and really focus on solar. And that's definitely what they went ahead and did. And that's the way we went forward with Grand Bay.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Allison. Appreciate the presentation this evening. I think Grand Bay was one of the presenters at the UMNB conference, if I recall. There was 2 communities that had implemented. I believe it was their waste management. I guess a quick question for staff is, staff, when you brought this forward, were you thinking more for waste management, or were you thinking more for the WC O'Neill Arena complex, or both? What were you?
Well, Your Worship, honestly, at the time, we were thinking for the arena, but I came to realize after it's a ground-mounted system, so it wouldn't meet the needs here. So it'd be for consideration at the water tower or somewhere else that it may make sense for the town, especially now that we've got an expanded area. There may be areas outside of, in Bayside and Shamcook that may also be available.
Perfect. And I guess the question is, I see the price point on this is what does servicing look like? Is there what is warranty? What is cost associated with any challenges you may have with the system?
No, I mean there's a maintenance agreement that we put in place with the customer, and there's different tiers of maintenance. It's roughly potentially up to about $2,500 per year, and that would involve an inspection and enhanced warranty. But there are different tiers. That's the middle tier.
Gotcha. Council, any questions for Mr. Allison? Councilor Blanchard, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. We've had some discussions on this previously, so it's good to see or good to hear from you, from the provider, exactly what it entails. Just a question. Mr. Spear mentioned some of the municipal services, I guess, we'll be looking to maybe recover some costs or find efficiencies, I guess, the arena and our wastewater management systems there. Just wondering about proximity to those services and how, because initially we were thinking solar panels possibly on top of the arena. I'm just wondering about this ground-mounted system. How does that work? How does that sort of tie back into the grid, if you will, and how do we how do we feed into those services, or is it just sort of in general and utilize the credits later on? I'm just sort of curious about the model, how it works.
Yeah, you'd need to be connected to within about 100 feet of the meter that you're planning on offsetting. So depending on the proximity of the system to, or of the location for your water treatment plant, you want to make sure that the land is within reasonable proximity of the system.
Okay. The second question I'd have, just because, again, we had looked at this previously, and in the communications that the town staff and I had with NB Power, there were some limitations on or restrictions on the amount of power you could actually produce and sort of feed back into the grid for the credits. I'm just wondering if you knew anything about that, or are you aware of any restrictions, or I don't know if you could add to that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So there's a 100 kilowatt limit in terms of what you can connect back to the grid, and that's an NB Power policy limit, where you can net meter up to 100 kilowatts of a name-plated solar system. Now, depending on what the energy production or energy consumption looks like at your water treatment plant, it's entirely possible you're not going to send anything back to the grid because it might all be consumed locally. So in the case of Grand Bay, that's exactly what their scenario is. They built a system where all the power that's getting produced, because of the nature of the water treatment plant that it's running all the time, that it's consuming all the power locally, and there's never a situation where they're sending anything back to the grid. So we can size it to really meet what your needs are, but from a technical policy perspective, you're not able to at least interconnect more than 100 kilowatts into the grid.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, no, it does. Thank you.
Okay, super. Yeah.
Any other member of council? Mr. Knopper, Mr. Spear, any questions from you?
Maybe just a quick one, Joe. So where the best place we're thinking for a ground-mounted system is in a place where there's a meter, but the consumption isn't all that high. Can you use that as your primary point and offset the credits against other accounts within your organization, or can it only be against the 1 meter?
That is a great question. So we work a lot with agriculture. So farms are able to do virtual net metering. So you're able to interconnect to a meter, and then the power that's produced by solar is fed back to the grid on that meter. And so a farm, let's say, has 10 meters. They would share those energy credits that are produced through solar across all their meters. I'm not sure that that situation exists with municipalities. That's something I'll have to take away.
Okay, one more quick call. Any other member of council? All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Allison. Appreciate the presentation. I
Sure.
don't know if it's a coincidence, but we are approaching budget time, so maybe that was strategic, and we do have a target in place, especially for CO2 emissions, or we have to reduce it. So appreciate the presentation and the information, and unless you're very interested in municipal politics in the town of St. Andrews, we'll let you go. So thanks so much for being here.
All right, thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks. Okay, approval of the minutes of previous meeting, communications, staff report, financial report. That is all done in the other regular meetings, so that will move us all the way ahead to introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. The first portfolio is finance and administration, which is Deputy Mayor Akaji's. However, we do not have a motion. It is a discussion on bylaw number 16-03, a procedural bylaw for the council of the town of St. Andrews. And I believe the staff report for this one has come from Mr. Knopper. Mr. Knopper, I'll pass the floor over to you to talk about the changes proposed, as we did have a light agenda today, so we wanted to start bringing that forward to have some discussion. So over to you, Mr. Knopper.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Council, as the Mayor noted, bylaw number 1603, your procedural bylaw is up for review. Based on staff's recommendations, there are some changes that we would, recommend here. So, we would recommend amendments to the number of councillors on the departments or separation of portfolios. So, through staff discussion today with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, we're looking at a couple of options of splitting up and breaking up the way our portfolios work. So we're looking at a planning and community development portfolio. We're looking at an economic development, business and culture portfolio, a recreation and environment portfolio, a public works and safety portfolio, and then finance and admin. So the goal would be is to put 2 counselors per portfolio, except for finance and admin. So in the event any of those counselors were not available for the meeting, the deputy mayor could step in and read those. So to give an example, so suggestions with the mayor here. So planning and community development, Councillor Harlan and Councillor Heenan. Economic development, business and culture, Councillor Hurdle and Councillor Weir. Recreation and environment, Councillor Goodmichel and Councillor Blanchard. Public Works and Public Safety, Councillor Bennett and Councillor Neal, and Finance and Administration, the Deputy Mayor Akaji is where at least the thought is for the place councillors. We're also looking to change the meeting schedule. So one of the things that we worked on this summer was eliminating meetings in July and August. So the second meetings, although it made the meetings a little longer, I think it gave flexibility to both staff and council to enjoy some of the summer break. One other we were discussing today, was brought up that council would like a meeting of council of the whole. So one item we would like to bring back is more of a discussion, a workshop, staff workshop, instead of it being council of the whole, it would be a staff workshop. That way registers can be discussed, council can bring up ideas, concepts, and we'll look at scheduling that. Modifications to the voting of deputy mayor. So currently, it is selected as the highest voted councillor. Now that we have Shamcook and Bayside included in this, that sort of skews it because only those in those areas can vote for that particular ward councillor. So the way it was before was at the first meeting of council, councillors could be nominated or self-nominate themselves to be the deputy mayor, and then it was voted on by council. That seemed to work before, and it's up to this council if that's an idea or if you have another one to bring forward. Potentially looking at moving meetings that fall on holidays to Wednesdays. This would also help versus the Tuesdays that we've been doing. So this would support CHCO and their abilities to help video and record the meetings. One addition we would like to look at is councillor members' absences and remuneration. So although the Local Governance Act does allow for you need a motion of council for beyond 2 months, there can be discussions of, if you are gone beyond that timeline, are you really at that point working for the town of St. Andrews? So does that mean you get remuneration as part of your leave of absence? If councillors wish to add the committee meeting once every quarter, so that's the modification that we'd have. But beyond that, we're open to any other suggestions, thoughts, and ideas of council.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Knopper. And it is important to note that those portfolios are just a proposal right now, so we'll have those emailed out to you just so you can reflect on them. But the idea is that you have 2 people that can alternate if one's not there as well. If you can't make it to a meeting, someone else to kind of provide support, and then we would just break out the motions accordingly. Probably a lot of them have 2 subjects. There might be one that's more of a subject expert than the other, but that is the very preliminary, just quick idea. So to be discussed by all of us, but maybe to start, we'll email it out just so everyone can see it on paper, just to have some reflection and make sure it's a portfolio that you're passionate about, right? So any comments, any additions, anything based on Mr. Knopper said that anybody would like any clarification or even discussion at this point? It's more than welcome. So council, the floor is yours. Any member? Councillor Ware?
There's one clause in the procedural bylaw that I think is very cumbersome, and that's number 28, the mayor entering debate and requiring council to permit the mayor to enter debate, or he must vacate the chair. And it's I realize parliamentary procedure requires that, but from a practical point of view, it's not a very effective bylaw, and I don't know whether we, in fact, follow it that closely. So,
no. So I think that that was kind of adjusted from originally of what it was. So, it's important that I add perspective because I'm the one in a lot of meetings. But in the same sense, I think it's important that the mayor steps down if they're very passionate about something, where they're really debating against councillors. And the reason being is, whatever decision you have, whether, let's be honest, I personally support or not, I am the voice of council. So to sit around a table and argue something, and then all of a sudden I go to the meeting and be like, well, this is why council did it. I think that's primarily one of the main reasons it is there. So again, but there is a fine line there where sometimes there is information I'm privy to that I should be making council aware of. So unless someone feels different, I think we've been kind of walking the line pretty good from my standpoint, but I haven't had anyone come back to me and said you were really strong opinionated on that and it skewed the conversation. But over to you if I'm missing the mark on that one. All right. I guess maybe everyone's scared to say because they're Councillor Ireland.
So Paul, you talked about staff workshop, which is the same as what you had talked about as being the council of the whole?
So it would be a little bit different. So it would be more staff-led versus council, it would still be the council of the whole, council would still all be there, you would still provide opinions. No
Right.
motions can be made at that meeting, and a lot more of it can be like, if we want to have a workshop on, let's say, the motor vehicle bylaw,
Right.
or if we want to have just a workshop of something else, then we can schedule that as part of the meeting. And it would give, one of the thought processes is, if we go to it as a staff meeting, you guys can have a meeting discussion beyond having full public
Right.
present. So it would give you guys a little bit more time to review and just provide feedback to staff,
Right.
is really what we're looking at.
So I'm very supportive of that idea. I just don't think once a quarter is enough, from my perspective.
No, so my apologies, we're actually looking at it to be once a month,
Okay,
so.
that makes
And we
more
would have to
sense to me.
schedule it as more than likely one of the Mondays of the month, so.
Okay.
We already have a first and third, possibly the second and the fourth Monday, we would look at doing
Excellent.
a
Thank you.
council workshop.
And just to be clear, no decisions can be made, but that's when you might bring forward, say, hey, this has been talked about for a while, can we bring that forward to debate
Right.
it and decide on it at a regular meeting? So
Right.
there's a lot of communities that have done different committees in that, and I haven't seen a lot of them be successful because basically staff ends up having about 10 different meetings a month as a result of it. I know some neighboring communities have tried it and they've already abandoned the model. So the only experience that I've had that's been successful is kind of that committee of a whole. We are a small community too, but it's also important to note that that will be modified. We used to do committee meetings, and all we do is review the wording for the following meeting, and it was kind of a little bit redundant. You might catch the odd, hey, let's change that background. For the most part, it doesn't really justify a full meeting every month. So now it's register, review, plus a work session.
Your worship, just on that, so actually within the bylaw itself, there was a purview of having a meeting once a month with each individual counselor. What we ended up finding was there was so much more information for each different portfolio that it seemed better to have council of the whole. That way everyone can be a part of the wholesome discussion versus trying to individualize it, and it took a lot of time when we were individualizing it as well.
And the other thing for motions coming forward, the old tradition was if brought forward by a counselor and seconded by another, it would come on the agenda. But when it was individual meetings, there was no other counselor there, so almost everything made it to it. So the first few months that we had it, it wasn't an effective way. It was worth a try, but the committee of a whole, again, everybody hears everything, and everyone, and it's really, we were kind of meeting 3 out of 4 Mondays anyway, so it just formalizes the fact that we will. Keeping in mind that during July and August, based on this, that it would be a little bit less. And they were long meetings, but I think everybody appreciated the fact that it was just a little, not that we don't like being together, it was just a little less. Any other questions on this? Any concerns? All right, so we'll make those modifications. Let's send those portfolios out. That's the only thing I'd really like to have more discussion on, just to make sure that everybody feels like it's a portfolio they want to be part of. Or it could even come back to say these two don't make any sense being together, keeping in mind that at the end of the day, they're all about community. Okay, so you got everything from that, Mr. Nopper. That's good. Perfect. Thank you very much. So we are jumping all the way ahead to business, tourism, heritage, and culture. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before us is reference BTHC230906, and the subject is the bylaw number 23-04, a bylaw of the Town of St. Andrews to impose a special business improvement levy, first reading. The background is, as part of downtown beautification initiatives, the St. Andrews Business Improvement Area collects an annual levy from its members to pay for various projects and events. The BIA, established in 1984, is a geographical area between Water Street from Princess Royal Street to Elizabeth Street. All businesses within this area are within the BIA and subject to the annual levy. As per the Business Improvement Act of New Brunswick, the council must set the levy annually by bylaw, which also includes approval of their budget and a public hearing of objections. Please note that an updated budget will be provided for Schedule A before the second reading. So there are a couple of motions before us. The first is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for first reading of bylaw number 23-04, a bylaw of the Town of St. Andrews to impose a special business improvement levy for 2024 in the Town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
Seconder for that one, please. Okay, Councillor Blanchard. Discussion on this motion. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. It has been carried. This is the Town of St. Andrews bylaw number 23-04, a bylaw of the Town of St. Andrews to impose a special business improvement levy. And enclosed within it is Schedule A, just so everyone's aware, which is the St. Andrews Business Improvement Corporation, Inc. 2024 proposed budget. And Mr. Knopper will have this posted.
Through you, your worship, you would have received an email today with the updated budget, and it'll be posted after first reading with the updated budget.
Perfect. So that will be posted for the public to view anything, but it's basically consistent to how it's been in the community for, I'm not sure how many years, but definitely a lot longer than I've been on council. All right, the next motion.
Thank
Will
you,
be
Your
an
Worship.
amendment to this, just to let you know, but maybe just to get it on the table, we'll stick to what's written. Does that work? It's just a date amendment, Councilor Hurdle.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. The motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews sets the date of Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex, Council Chambers, for a public hearing of objection to Bylaw 23-04, a bylaw to impose a special business improvement levy for 2024 in the Town of St. Andrews. And I so move.
Thank you very much. Could we have a seconder for that one? Got Councilor Heenan. Discussion on this one, I guess amendment would be, I'm just jumping over here to make sure. Yes, so Mr. Knopper has let us know that the date should be amended for Monday, November 6th. I believe it is to give it the amount of time to be properly posted. Is that correct?
So through your worship, it has to be posted in a newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks. So by doing it now, posting it out, and having it online, it gives plenty of time for the public to review and ask any questions.
So could I have a mover for that amendment to Monday, November 6th? I've got Councilor Heenan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. Any discussions on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. It's everybody. It's been amended. Any more discussion? All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. That date has been set. Thank you very much, Councillor. And there's nothing under Recreation Community Services, Planning and Economic Development, which brings us now to new business, the food truck for Market Square in regards to use of Oktoberfest. I know I was at the Regional Service Commission meeting that night, so I didn't get to participate in this one. But my understanding is there were some concerns around maybe even safety with the truck operating while they were putting and taking down the tent. Council, so I don't know if anyone wanted to kind of lead this off, if there was any concerns over the dates that were approved. I don't think it was from the perspective I heard, I don't think it was a concern about the food truck operating as part of Oktoberfest. It was operating longer than that event. Is that safe to assume? So council, I guess to reverse any decision like that, it would require 2/3 vote. Was that safe to say? I guess, council, before we kind of discuss that, is there any concerns for staff on changing the course of that action, or is that the will of council, Mr. Spear?
Your worship, after the last meeting, the proponent was notified that it had been approved. And while I recognize that maybe the council has second thoughts, I'm not sure for the addition of an extra day at this point, it'd be really fair to the proponent. That said, what wasn't totally understood, at the time, was that the proponent is acting outside of the Oktoberfest committee. So they weren't aware of it at the time, and staff didn't have that present or information on hand at the time one was asked that night, but it was still approved by council moving forward. So with it only being a few days away, it's council's will, but I'm assuming the proponents made some purchases and actions anticipating we'd carry through with the original application.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Any member of council, like Councilor Harland?
So, Mr. Spear, have we reached out to the Oktoberfest committee? Do they have concerns? I understand the concerns about, the safety concerns about setup and takedown, but I'm assuming that is something that can be scheduled. That's something that can be worked around. But do the Oktoberfest committee, does the Oktoberfest committee have any concerns about the food truck being there an additional day?
I don't know, I think it's more just they want to be known that they hadn't been the ones to make the application, that it was independent of them. Reminding you, I've been out of town for 13 days till yesterday, so or till Saturday, so I'm a little behind on the discussions after the fact.
Councilor Blanchard.
Thanks, Your Worship. So just on this, where we did approve for the single day outside of the original request for the Friday, and we had some concerns come forward on the setup of the tent, I guess, which occurs on the Friday, which we weren't necessarily mindful of or privy to at the time. So with that, I'm just wondering, with the setup, do we have a sense of when the setup would be complete? Because I think it was concerns about the cement blocks and heavy equipment being used to move those things around in proximity to where the food truck would be set up. Do we know what time the setup would be complete, and could we perhaps amend to say that the truck can be present after a certain time, and then, of course, on the day of? We're not really concerned about the tear down because we only approved the Friday and the Saturday of the event. So I'm just wondering if or if there are other areas where potentially the truck could be parked on the Friday. I'm just looking for options because we did approve the Friday. So I'm just wondering if we have a sense of that.
It'll be later in the day. It's quite a big tent. It's basically the equivalent of the Paddle Fest tent, from what I'm understanding. So, from watching it be set up over the last several years, and in May, I can tell you it's pretty near a full day event. The discussion at the last meeting was that it was dependent on, or staff would have to work with the proponent in order around the scheduling of Market Square, and so we'll have to go back to them and say, the setup's got to happen first. You can't have customers wandering around the square while you've got different things going. It's really not going to change their plans wholeheartedly because they had to be there, or they're planning on being there for the 23rd anyway. So anything council allows them is a bonus. So I think it's fair to say we can go back to them and say, look, for safety reasons, you can't open until supper time. But since their primary customers or venue that they're going to be serving is a pub that doesn't get real busy till supper time, typically, it probably would line up anyway. So we'll talk to the proponent just to say that you're going to have to wait until the other things are set up for safety concerns.
So I think maybe that, Councilor Heen, I'll go to you. Maybe the solution here is that just the proponent meets with our CAO and discusses a safety plan around the day. And if it suffices to Mr. Spear, again, unless council feels differently, that works for us, and he can come up with, if it's not safe, then it doesn't operate. If there's a way to run it safely, it can operate, and use CAO discretion on that plan unless someone sees it differently. Councilor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. I still go back to the original where we voted on it for 1 day and 1 day only. Bringing it in that late in the game of trying to extend it for the 4 days, I really didn't appreciate. It wasn't done the proper channels. We've made the compromise of having it for the 2 days, so of course we're not going to be able to go back on that. But I really feel that our first decision when we made it for the 1 day was the way that it should have been and stayed that way, because that was appropriate planning, not bringing it back again to the table. I really feel that a council needs to, when they've made a decision, that is it. And I disagree with the fact of someone coming and asking for an extension totally out of the blue. I mean, that should have been done at the time that we voted for it the first time.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Heenan. I was, again, at the Regional Service Commission meeting, and the minutes haven't been approved yet, but was it approved for the 1 day, or was it approved for the duration of the 1 day? So the request now is to extend it?
No, Your Worship, no, just for
so
clarification.
council yeah.
So the Oktoberfest actual event was approved a couple of 3 meetings ago in August.
Yep.
And then, just so, I guess for Councillor Heenan's sake, Mr. Bartlett wasn't part of the original application. It was the Oktoberfest committee. And then Mr. Bartlett said, well, if I'm going to be there for 1 day, it'd be nice to be there for the weekend. He put in, then so he followed up with another application outside of the event, which we discussed last meeting and okayed the Friday and Saturday.
So council did approve for a longer period of time
Yeah.
the last meeting. That's it. Okay. All right. Let's get some consensus on that.
Can I,
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councilor Neal.
can I just ask, thank you, Your Worship, where they intend to set up the trailer?
So from my understanding, the trailer is to be set up along the the brewery's deck space. So it'll be in line with, like, as you're walking down, it'll be right there with the tent and everything else to the side, because they're also going to use the town stage. That'll be for music. So town stage will be between the cannons, the tent will be in front of that, and the food services will be against the deck of the brewery.
So where Korean barbecue is on Market Day, pretty much. Yeah. I'm
Is
there
there-
quite regularly.
Like, do we know for certain if there's sufficient space for, like, this is
Yeah,
a
they-
almost 30-foot trailer plus the tent and?
Yeah, the organizers came in and provided a full-scaled layout of everything set up.
Okay.
So it's going to fit in there, it's just they're going to have to time it right. I would think they'd want to put that in before they set up everything else, because it's going to be buried in there by the time the tent and stuff are put in, I would think.
Any other member of council? Councilor Ware?
I guess I'll have to chime in. I agree with Councilor Heenan. I have to agree with Councilor Heenan. The original motion was presented by the St. Andrews Brewing Company as the organizer, and they did ask for the Oktoberfest truck to provide food. In my opinion, Mr. Bartlett at that point in time had allowed the committee, the organizers, to become his agent in carrying out negotiations on his behalf. And then when he wasn't satisfied with the outcome of those, or he changed his mind on it, he then decided to become his own agent and submit another application. So it just was it was a little messy. I guess that's my comment on it.
Okay, so let's try to get some consensus. I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing stick to the days of Oktoberfest, the actual event, right? And I'm also hearing CAO, I had a few head nods there, that CAO discretion on can it operate outside of that. So is those the two options we just want to get consensus on between the two? Is that safe to
Your
say?
Worship, sorry, just in that meeting you missed, council's already approved it to operate on the Friday. So
So we'd actually need a formal motion.
we need a formal motion if you can rescind that, or if you're okay with me to limit the operating hours for safety reasons to after supper time.
So
that
what I'll
should be
do is
fine.
I'll get consensus, and if council wants to just go to the days of Oktoberfest running, then I'll do a formal motion. Does that make sense? If they're fine with CAO discretion, I don't think that needs a motion. That would be just a friendly term is what I would say, something that could be done with a lot of motions. So just a quick show of hands, how many think that the food truck should only operate during the actual October Fest event and not before? Just signify by raising their hand.
I guess so.
How many think that it should be CAO discretion? Okay, I will side with CAO discretion in this particular one. So thank you very much, council. No motion required on that one. Who would have thought I finally got to vote? And that's the one. All right, we are now into question period. And a reminder to the audience, and people online, this is related to things that were discussed on the agenda this evening. I will start by doing a call. Mr. Knopper, is there anyone online that you can see that would potentially like to ask questions? Just do a show of hands if they do.
Heather Eden, can you please raise your hand if you've got a question for council on tonight's agenda?
While we're waiting for the hand raise, we'll see if anyone in the audience has any questions for anything on tonight's agenda. We do have a closed session item. This is just leading in. All right, no response.
No response and nothing on email.
Nothing submitted by email, okay. So we are now into councillor and deputy mayor's comments. Councillors, any member of council like to speak? Got Deputy Mayor Akagi.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Just a couple of things. Earth Fest is this Sunday on Minister's Island, so I hope everybody will be attending. They're having different venues on the day, and it's a very worthwhile. It's going to be on Sunday, the whole day on Minister's Island, and the times are listed on their website. And they also have 500 free tickets to get on the island, so you can apply for that as well. The second thing is, of course, Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is the 30th of September, which is Saturday, and we have opted to have it on the Saturday, and we've put posters practically everywhere and via email and stuff for our event. Oh, it's upside down. For our event, it's going to be on Indian Point at 5:30, and it'll be a solemn and silent walk that we've had traditionally every year, and it will be on Indian Point, and I hope everybody will turn out. I know there are plans in other communities in Charlotte County and all over New Brunswick There may be one in St. Stephen or St. George or Black Harbor, but this is the one that we are hosting for St. Andrews. So, and the money collected, because we always take a collection, will be used for Truth and Reconciliation, education, different things that we're going to plan to do in the future. So I urge you to come out that day, rain or shine, we will be there. And next year, we will have 75 drums that we have completed this year for that Truth and Reconciliation. So I'm looking forward to next year. We have to wait for them to season, but this year we'll have a few drums there. So please come and join us for the walk. And think of all the lost souls and the survivors that have come back. So it's a real tough month for Indigenous people, but we hope that you will come. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Any other member of council? Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council, on behalf of the citizens of St. Andrews, Shamcook, and Bayside, we'd like to say a big thank you to our outside workers for the diligent work that they did on this weekend. I had more people call me over to tell me about the different stories about them cleaning out drains and everything in the worst of the weather. And this wasn't just one or two people, it was a lot of people when I went out for coffee the other day. So I send out a real personal thank you, and I hope on behalf of council, a big thank you to those folks who worked 18-hour, 24-hour days. And we should be proud to have them in our employ. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Any other member of council? Okay, well, Councillor Heenan, you did take my comments, but thank you very much. I did want to acknowledge our CAO did come back early from vacation for the storm, so thank you very much. Mr. Knopper was leading the charge throughout the week with our public work supervisor, Kevin Hughes. The fire chief was actively involved throughout the entire day, and the public works crew, again, being out in those conditions, doing what they were doing. There was literally a few of us driving around and telling them of the trees, and they were hauling them out as quick as they did. They did an incredible job, and the storm obviously didn't have quite the impacts when we were the eye of it, and we're very thankful for that, especially the timing around high tide. So I really feel like this community's had a couple of incidents this year, but both of them we were overall, and I understand there's some people that are impacted by both the events, but overall we were very lucky as a community. So. And then as well, I want to recognize NB Power linemen and linewomen. We had, last time I checked on the outages there, in the peak of the storm, there was over 7,000 people in a region without power, and I'm looking down at it right now, and there's only 66 customers affected right now. If you're one of those 66, I know it's been a couple days, but to think of how quick they've restored power, and even Bob Scott, when we called about the Passamaquoddy Lodge, he had someone there within 45 minutes. When we said it's been 24 hours, they're operating under on generator. So overall, NB Power did an incredible job of restoring services. It definitely, when the high winds are there and they're going up in the trucks, it's pretty impressive, to say the least. So yes, thank you, Councillor Heenan, for leading it off for me. I did get really excited over Municipalities Week, and I forgot to say that I will be declaring a conflict of interest on the closed session, but I will be guiding you to it. So at 7:22 p.m., I'm looking for council to move into closed session per the Local Governance Act, Section 68(1)C, which is information that could cause financial loss or gain to a person or the local government, or could jeopardize negotiations leading to a collective agreement or contract. Could I have a mover for that? I've got Councillor Harlan and seconded by Councillor Bennett. All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That's everybody. We are in closed session. We'll give a few moments for guests to leave and technology to shut down. Thank you for attending, and have a great evening.
Recording stopped.